Hello, and welcome to the Mr. 50mm YouTube channel. I'm Mr. 50mm, but you can call me Chris. For today's video, we're going to talk about what it's like to shoot with a Nikon D1x in 2024. And we're going to talk about the mystery within this camera. Some of you may already know what I'm talking about when I mention the mysteries of the D1x. Keep that to yourselves till the end of the video, or until I bring it up. Thanks. Let's go over some background information before we get started. The Nikon D1x was Nikon's flagship camera, and it was released in February of 2001 alongside the D1h. The D1x uses a APS-C size sensor, and it makes about 5.9 megapixels. Using some kind of funky sensor magic though, it actually has a CCD that has about 5.3 megapixels. More on that later though, it's a bit weird. Moving on, it has an ISO range of 125 to 800 with a boost option of 1600 to 3200. It can shoot at a brisk 3 FPS for up to 9 RAWs. And accompanying that speed has a 5-point focusing system. It has a tiny little review screen on the back that is apparently good for 130K dots. So many dots. And without a battery, this thing weighs roughly 1.1 kilograms, or 2.42 pounds, or roughly 1.1 plena. So it's a bit hefty. Now, speaking of batteries though, this thing uses the older nickel metal hydride batteries. Here's kind of what it looks like. And you might have noticed that's a large battery. Finally, I do want to point out this camera has some weird impressive stats. It has a mechanical shutter speed of 1/116,000th. That's pretty good. There's actually not that many cameras that have that mechanical shutter speed. And lastly, in 2001, when this camera was released, it was up for $5,500 US, or approximately 7,500 Canadian dollars. In 2024 dollars, that's roughly 9,000 USD, or almost 4 plena. That's a lot of money. Okay, so let's start with a couple things you're going to want to consider if you do want to shoot or purchase one of these cameras. The first thing I'm going to talk about is at the time we're recording, this camera is, it's over 2 decades old, like pretty well over. And because of that, the original battery, mine's dead. Actually, mine's lost and dead. I don't know where it is. So with that being said, I actually luckily found a third-party battery at some point on Amazon. But at the time of this writing, I'm unable to find any, at least on Amazon Canada's website. So sourcing batteries for the camera could be a challenge for any of the Nikon D1 series. It does look like if you're able to purchase through smaller retailers that they do, some of them still have stock of these batteries, but they're not cheap. Expect to pay between 50 and 100 USD. And that means that if you are like hopeful and for some reason you want a new old stock Nikon branded battery, it's probably going to be dead, and on top of that, they're going to be extraordinarily expensive. I think I saw one or two on eBay, and the asking price is like $150, $200 USD. It's a lot of money. That being said, though, there's another option. There's 2 more. So the other one is you could potentially shoot tethered and buy the Nikon AC adapter. I've seen those online on eBay and on AliExpress. They're not super bad, like 30 or 40 USD. The other option, which is a bit extreme, is if you do have a dead pack, it is possible to convert it to take lithium-ion cells and then put that converted pack into the camera and it'll take pictures. That being said, standard disclaimer here, if you do decide to do something like that and you got the idea from my video, I'm not responsible for any incidents, accidents, fires, or other shenanigans that arise from your decisions to do that. But that being said, I will post the link to some instructions on the comments or in the description below. And if I do actually find my original pack that is dead, I will also be trying this mod because I don't think I'll be able to buy third-party packs in a little while, and I'd like to keep this camera and keep it working. So yeah, like I said, check the description below for the instructions that someone else posted. Again, it's not my idea, so again, I'll post their link below. Another fun thing that you're going to want to take into account with these older cameras is that they're old. So consequence of that is that they use compact flash cards. Specifically for this camera, it uses only FAT16 formatted compact flash cards. So that does limit you to roughly 2.2 gigabytes of partition size at a maximum. So right now I'm using a Lexar 256 megabyte card. I get like 31 RAWs on a card. However, I can actually confirm though, if you do format a larger card, like I took a 4 gigabyte card and I opened up the Windows 10 and 11 partition manager program, and I opened or formatted a simple partition using regular FAT and set it to 2 gigabytes. It did actually format, and with that partition active, I put it in the Nikon D1x, and the D1x was able to take pictures, review images, and did all the good stuff with the card formatted to the 2 gigabyte size. That being said, I did then try to format the card in camera to see if it could still use the card, and yeah, it appeared to format, and then when I tried to take a picture, did not want to accept the card, didn't want to release the shutter, kind of weird. So I took the card out, and I thought maybe the partition got messed up, but on the computer, it actually opened the card properly, and it was formatted to 4 gigabytes, so the card will be formatted to 4 gigs on the camera, but the camera will not read the 4 gig card. That's weird, right? I think that's weird. Anyways, those are some of the bigger caveats that I can think of right now. If you do plan to shoot a Nikon D1, to keep in mind. So yeah, battery, memory cards, those are the big things. Anyways, on to the next section. Okay, so the lens that I'm going to primarily be shooting with while talking about the Nikon D1x is the 50mm f1.8D, as you see here. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because I don't actually have that many autofocus Nikon lenses, plenty of manual focus glass. But for the purposes of this video, I wanted to enjoy all 5 of these AF points. I think for the most part, if you're going to buy one of these, chances are you're probably going to do it using a small stockpile of Nikon f-mount autofocus lenses. So it's probably more reflective of the situation if I have a look at it with an AF lens. That and manual focus on this thing isn't super fun. It's doable, but autofocus is kind of the way to go for these things. So how does this thing feel in hand? Honestly, considering that this weighs a solid 1.1 plenum, it feels actually great. It's not super heavy. It doesn't feel that heavy. It is heavy, don't get me wrong. But the camera is incredibly well balanced. The grips are super comfortable, and the controls on the camera are they're intuitive and they make sense for what they're supposed to do. Which again, it makes sense because this camera is based off the Nikon F5 film body, so things would have had to be done shooting with like just auto buttons, a top panel like this, and possibly a rear panel like that. But on film, you're not getting a color LCD to scroll through menus and stuff, so they kind of had to think of ergonomics and speedy operations without using an LCD during the film days. And as a result, this camera is fantastic to shoot. Like, it feels great when you're shooting, and like your hands, your thumbs, your fingers, they all land in places that make sense for controls that you'd want on a camera. So yeah, excellent feeling camera. Like I said, most things are very intuitive. Changing modes, for example, hold down the mode button and then rotate the rear control dial with your thumb. Want to change the metering? Cool. Press the button and rotate that switch. I admit this one's a bit awkward to do, but maybe I just need to get used to it. Let's have a look at the menu. It's dead simple, although the button to get to it is pretty small and kind of spongy. There are 4 menus: playback, shooting, custom, and setup. Easy enough, easy to navigate, awesome. There's a few weird niggles though. If you go into the menu and you select the ISO 1600 or 3200 boost mode, these don't enable the modes, they switch your current ISO setting to that boost level. And then if you try to change your ISO from the regular ISO controls, you can't switch them out. You have to go back into the menu and disable the boost mode. Kind of weird, but they're still figuring out DSLRs at this point, so cut them some slack. At any rate, look at this LCD hump. It's kind of weird, doesn't affect the operation or anything, but you know, this basically means the GFX 50, if the GFX 50 LCD had 10 pixels on it. It's actually not super terrible, but if you're coming from a modern camera, it'll really feel cramped. But honestly, I find this kind of a good thing, because basically I'm not going to stare at the screen the entire time. I'm going to actually take some pictures, and it's good enough for confirming focus and checking exposure. You know, the important things. If you're familiar with Nikon DSLRs, image review is going to mostly be the same, except where you zoom into the image. For some reason, that's not the checkerboard button. It's actually the funk button, and I think that's a better button. Alright, so I want to circle back to something. So I mentioned the feel of the camera early on, and so I want to circle back to something that kind of surprised me about this, and that is something that contributes to the feel, the rubber grips on the camera. This stuff. So I realize that, I think I'm fairly lucky. I don't think all of them are like this. I think maybe some are, but the rubber grip on this camera, none of it has come loose. Not like in the 23 years of its existence, or maybe a little less. It hasn't started to come apart, and as a result, it feels super solid. And again, it's good grip in the hand, which is kind of weird given how old the camera is. So maybe this one was just a lucky camera. It got babied quite a bit. Because I have a D3S, much newer camera, and I had to re-glue a bunch of the grip for that. And some of you may have seen my short on my Fujifilm X-T1, not short, but the smaller 5-minute video. That camera, that's a pretty new camera, 2014, and I think all of the rubber on that started coming off. The adhesive basically disintegrated, the rubber itself expanded and wouldn't fit in the grooves anymore. But look at this, nothing is peeling up in any weird spots. There's the spots around where you think that they might be coming up, where the command dial is, that's rock solid. And where people mainly grip, where my X-T1 was, you usually get substantial peelage there because people are gripping. You get hand sweat and hand juice all over your camera, and it just weakens the adhesive. Apparently, human sweat and things, they don't play well. But on this camera, this D1x I have, still feels great. Anyways, I just wanted to rant about, not rant, but I wanted to admire the quality of this D1x that I got. Good job, D1x, you held up. But yeah. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. On to the next part. So one negative thing about the camera is how it feels when you're shooting in continuous mode. So I may have mentioned earlier that it has a brisk shooting speed of 3 FPS. You can hear it again. Yeah, so, at this point, it's actually, I realized I have shoot without card on, so it hit the 9-shot buffer and just kept going because it wasn't writing anything. But, here, I'll pop the card back in and we'll give it a go. 3 FPS, kind of slow, I mean, by modern standards, but at the time, it's a perfectly fine camera. And honestly, it's a fairly fine shooting speed now. You don't necessarily need a million FPS for a camera like this, especially if you're revisiting the D1x for fun, I probably understand that you're gonna get slow shooting speeds. So let's run the buffer. Apparently I have 9 shots left anyways. Oh. Yeah, so I think for whatever reason it shot the shots and then it's dumping into the buffer now. I think I have a particularly slow card maybe. And that was I thought I had it on I think I do have it on a single shot, but it looks like it did oh no, it's not. It's just locked on Escudo. The shooting speed just wasn't super consistent, but yeah, so it's a bit of a slow shooting speed, and when you hit that buffer limit of I guess supposedly 9, it feels even slower. So pro tip, if you just shoot slower, you'll forget about the shallow buffer depth and slow speed, and it'll be fine again. Otherwise it'll still just feel like a regular digital camera, and In this part, I'm just going to voice over a bunch of photos that I took while walking around with the camera. I'm still trying to figure out a configuration to do some walking and talking, but for now, this will work. First things first, we got to acknowledge that this camera is 23 years old at this point, so high ISO is not its thing. Super dynamic range of 16 billion stops, also not its thing. So, I'm not going to shoot directly into the sun, and I'm not going to shoot virtually in pure darkness. That being said, dynamic range for the most part is actually fine. You can still recover a little bit, but it's easy to kind of blow the highlights. Also, the noise that the camera makes is fairly nice random pattern noise. So even at ISO 3200, it's not horrendous. Although you do see a little bit of banding. I thought I'd see something much worse. It's really not that bad. That being said, you do expect that with the random pattern noise, detail does end up being killed. So, there's that. The metering system on here is also pretty solid. It does tend to save the highlights in the matrix mode, so, get that exposure comp ready if you're not happy with the way that it's metering. And you can reliably just set it to +1 or something, just to boost it up. Or if you want, switch to spot metering, and there you go. That's usually a fairly good way to go as well. Let's quickly talk about the image quality and resolution. The images, I think, they come out looking fairly good. Especially if you're using for web and social media use, it's perfectly fine. Even if you want to do bigger prints, I think that's suitable as well. I mean, when it was new, that's what these cameras are doing anyways. So, don't expect you're going to be counting the skin cells of the model that you shot, or that you're going to be looking in to appreciate the tears of a ladybug shot with a 50mm f1.8. However, you'll probably still have some fun, make some nice images, and most importantly, this camera will probably slow you down from shooting a bit. Again, not as much as shooting film, but more than if you're shooting with a modern mirrorless camera that'll help you focus with the power of AI and shoot at 4,000 frames per second. Additionally, since the files aren't 61 megapixels, you don't need to buy 1,000 terabytes of cloud storage or SSD to have a backup of your images. So, yay. But yeah, just don't go expecting that you're going to be able to crop a tiny section of your image and, zoom in and blow it up into a 8x10 print or something. You're not going to get that. But for the 6 megapixel output that you get, perfectly fine, perfectly usable, perfectly printable. Right, so let's get back to that weird sensor. It is really funky. So the sensor in this camera, if you remember from the beginning, I stated that it is roughly 5.4, 5.33 megapixels of the CCD variety, by the way. And that in itself, not very odd, pretty common for the time actually. And that is true enough-ish. The sensor is 5.33 megapixels and has a very odd sensor arrangement. The Bayer filter on top uses a rectangular shaped pixel that kind of makes the actual sensor output actually 4,028 pixels. this way by 1324 this way, which again, it makes it roughly 5.33 megapixels. But when you take some photos of it, you get some Nikon processing magic, and it turns that output into a 3008 pixel by 1960 pixels, which is about 5.9 megapixels. So I know what you're thinking. Okay, fine. Nikon used some oddball sensor design and did some fancy math, and you recovered the vertical resolution using this weird sensor that is super sensitive this way, but not so much that way. And true enough, but there's more to unravel in this weird mystery sensor of mysteries. In 2008, Nikon released an article talking about their imaging processing technology, and they'd revealed that the Nikon D1 and subsequently the D1H, D1x that I'm holding here actually contained a sensor that had 10.8 megapixels worth of photo sites. That's a lot of pixels. However, instead of doing what you'd normally do and have a standard, one photo site and one color of the bare filter color filter array, the D1 and D1H actually had the color filter array set up so that every part of a single array element would cover 4 photo sites, making 4 photo sites cover 1 pixel. And then the camera would do some internal math to basically get an acceptable signal to noise ratio, and then that would represent your color value for that color filter array. It's kind of similar to what a lot of modern phones do with pixel binning. It's pretty weird, and it kind of implied that the D1X used the same sensor, but this time with the color filter array, it used, instead of a square array covering 4 pixels, they decided that, we can get an acceptable signal to noise ratio only using 2 photo sites instead of 4, and that's how you resulted in a square pixel that covered 2 photo sites with a lot of extra pixels this way and less that way. It was just because you cut that sensor and cut that the color array site in half. You either got to do it this way or this way, and Nikon chose to make the rectangle a vertical one. So yeah, I did find that just a little bit weird. But yeah, it seems that their primary justification was that their image processing technology had developed so far from the original D1 to the D1X that they were able to reduce the amount of photo sites required to get a good signal to noise ratio down from 4 to 2. So it enabled the 10 megapixel sensor to operate at 5, which is pretty good. So then so it also then saved the money, because then they already had the sensor. All you need to do was produce a new set of filter arrays, and bam, you get to not really change that much hardware on your camera. However, you get the sweet resolution that everyone super duper loves. And I'll post a link to an archived version of the page on the Nikon website. It's oddly enough not available now on the modern site. So you can have a look and read for it for yourself. So yeah, that's pretty funky. And there's again, continuing with this weird sensor funkiness, if you actually use a Nikon NX Studio or one of the open source image editors, I tried it on Darktable and Raw Therapy. If you open those up, by default, the software actually sees it as 10.8 megapixels worth of output, which is kind of funny, right? And with the NX Studio, you can change the output either from 6 megapixels to 10 megapixels in a weird menu setting somewhere. Now, here's the question though. What are you getting when you set it to 10 megapixels, or when the software interprets it as 10 megapixels? Now, are you actually getting the full 10.8 megapixel sensors worth of color information? Of course not. The filter array is still covering two photo sites per array element, so you're not getting. There's no way around that filter array. You're still getting 5.3 megapixels of imaging. I would think that the best case scenario is that in that raw file somewhere, the entire image information is captured, and you're getting that full 4,000-ish pixels with the horizontal resolution. And then what the software is doing is using the vertical resolution, using some fancy interpolation to then double that resolution to match the scaling of the horizontal elements and give you a 10 megapixel output. Again, that's my guess. I think the worst case scenario is that it's not doing that. It's using the normal roughly 6 megapixel output that you get from the camera, and it's just applying some sort of linear upscaling to 10 megapixels, which would kind of suck because that means you're definitely not using the entirety of the sensor to get the information, since that image itself already has to discard some horizontal information to interpolate and make the vertical pixels that the 6 megapixel image already has, or has set up. Now, I do want to kind of have a little quick informal look at this. So hold on a second. We're gonna put up some photos I took with the Nikon D1x saved at 10.8 megapixels. I'm gonna have that beside my Canon 40D, which is a 10 megapixel CMOS sensor camera, and it's gonna be the same photo taken with the Nikon 50mm f1.8 on an adapter, stopped down to the same amount, and shutter speed and ISO as closely matching as possible with the flash firing. And lastly, we're also going to have the Nikon D3S in the DX mode, which I think outputs roughly 8 megapixels, so it's a little smaller, and we're gonna have a look at those side by side. And so if you do look at that side by side, like it's pretty easy to tell which camera is outputting the full proper 10 megapixel image. It's the 40D. You do get more image resolution there, whether that's like the newer 40D sensor or whether or not it's the interpolation from the D1x. You can tell there's a difference in the technology, and the 40D does output a better file, and the 8 megapixel output from the D3S, you see is somewhere like it's, I think, also a little better than the 10 megapixel output from the D1x. That being said, those two images are much closer than you'd think. And even the 10 megapixel output from the 40D versus the 1DX, like they're not bad. Like side by side, like if you're looking at it on a computer screen, like on a MacBook 15-inch screen from a couple feet away, I'd be hard pressed to tell which is which without getting my eyes real close to the computer. So it's not as clear cut as you'd think. So, final judgment. What do I think of this thing? At the end of the day, do I personally recommend people go buy this thing? I'm gonna be honest, I would say no. I don't recommend picking one up nowadays. And the primary reason is the severely limited pool of third-party batteries. It's just gonna be really annoying. Like I said, best case scenario, you find one on a small website somewhere, you might be spending $40 on it, $40 USD, and again, insane amounts for first-party ones. It's kind of not great. The other thing is, if you don't already have small CF cards, just be prepared. You'd have to, again, be prepared to format them smaller to make them work, or go buy smaller cards. Luckily, that you can still buy new. But yeah, it's the battery thing that's a really big issue. The nickel metal hydride batteries are eventually going to die. I think they do appear to die fairly quick compared to lithium ion batteries. I don't know if that's a property of the nickel metal hydride batteries, or whether or not these batteries that we're getting from third-party suppliers are there's old batteries sitting around that haven't been used, so they work, but the battery life isn't really going to be guaranteed because maybe they've been sitting in a warehouse for 10 years. Who knows? But yeah, the battery issue is kind of big, and I know not everyone's going to be willing to chop up a cell to convert it into a lithium-ion pack. But again, it brings me to another point. If you need to find an AC adapter or the battery charger, like if the camera that you're looking for, a D1x, D1H, doesn't have a charger included, good luck. These are also extraordinarily expensive for what they are. Like they're between like $60 and $100 if you're looking for third or first party chargers. So again, really expensive considering that a lot of places that are selling like cameras that are verified working with nothing are like between 80 and 100 USD or 80 and 120 USD. So with that in mind, like really you're going to be spending another 100 to 120 USD for a battery and a charger. That's kind of a lot of money for this camera. That being said, if you're all in, and I assume you are because you're watching this video and your mind's already set on owning a piece of Nikon history, and you just want to try out the wild world of first gen DSLRs, like your mind's probably already set. And if you're in that camp, all the power to you. It looks like if you're gonna go onto the E of bays, a Nikon D1x functioning battery with the charger altogether, you're looking at roughly 200 USD to 250 USD. So something like 300 Canadian dollars to like 350-ish, some number around there. Alternatively, if you're not a collector that's die-hard set on getting one of these D1s, I have alternatives for you. Alternatives that may have significantly more longevity and may save you some cash money. So it looks like for very similar money, you can actually get the D2X or the D2H, the high-speed shooter one. They don't tend to sell for any more money than the D1 series, and you do get the bonus of more resolution, especially with the D2X, where you're getting like 10 megapixels. But pro tip, the D2X uses a CMOS sensor, not a CCD. So if you are set on CCD time, maybe get the regular D2H, the speedy shooter. That's got a CCD in it, I believe. And again, they're very similar money to the Nikon D1. Oh, actually no, I'm wrong. I'm actually not super sure what's in the D2H. It's a really weird sensor too. Like, I kind of want to get one because it's just a weird sensor. I think it's the only sensor of its sort. It is probably, it is some form of CCD or CMOS, but it had a really weird acronym. I don't remember what it was, but it's funky. I kind of want to try it. Okay, but back on track. Other alternatives, if you do want a camera that is, and you're really just after the CCD goodness, if you don't care about getting the D1 flagship, may I suggest Nikon D100 or D200. These are both CCD sensors. They are significantly cheaper, and again, their battery packs are pretty modern lithium-ion cells, which are still produced today. You can order them on Amazon. Again, similar D2H or D2X. They also have lithium-ion packs that you can still buy, and they're fairly cheap. All right, thanks for sticking to the end. What do you think of the D1X? Are you gonna buy one? Are you not gonna buy one? At any rate, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until the next time, bye.